Welcome to the MorrowMarriage podcast, guys. This one's going to be super exciting and you're going to be required to dig deep. Guys, we tell it like it is, and sometimes that's really, really hard for some of you. This is a great tool, but like all the tools, we have our own twist. Validation versus keeping the peace. Why you need to stop talking about sex if you're not having sex. That it is the man's fault. Marriage sucks. I'm Cass.
I'm Kathryn. You go in and you lay a boundary without connection, it breeds more disconnection.
Why are you in this messy marriage? And it's not what you think.
Don't do that, because then that is not authentic. That's fake, and you're trying to be somebody that you're not.
You need the foundation to have the intimacy, but right now you need to rebuild the foundation.
We're MorrowMarriage.
Let's flip divorce statistics with the new marriage.
But I know that those of you who are listening want that. That's the authenticity that you appreciate from our story. I just had a message this morning from somebody, honey, that was like, you know, all the coaches that are inundating my feed, you and your wife are so real, and we appreciate that so much. Guys, we can't be afraid to just share the actual truth of what's going on, because, well, I think you probably do this. I joke in my program, I'm like, I'm like your lawyer. If you bury the body, I need to know where, because otherwise I can't help you, you know? So today I want to kind of dive into this pedestal, the 10's versus the 6's, 7's, 3's, 0's for some of you. And
whoa, well, you are a 0 out of 10. If you are one of those 0s out of 10, please call us.
Yeah, I was a -5, probably, maybe -5,000 actually.
And I was on the pedestal. I was a 12.
Yeah, that's right. So let's talk about what this means, guys. Okay, the very first thing is you need to know this is very much tied in with, will this work for me? A common question that people have. Now, I don't know about other programs, but yes, our program will work for you. Why? Because if you think about it, we address things that people don't talk about. When you enter a program, you are trying to save your marriage. You want us to save it. And we're going to do an episode on this. You have to create the new. You can't save the old. But
yeah, the old sucks.
The old sucks.
We throw that one away.
Yeah, let's just start and rebuild with the person that you love, the person that you believe is a 10 out of 10. If I am on the phone with you, you don't want to lose her. Okay, that's it. If you're a woman on the phone with Kathryn, you don't want to deal with the pain, and sometimes it's a different perception. So I'm gonna let Kathryn discuss that a bit. But my guys, they have a 10 right in front of them. Like Kathryn said, she was a 4,000. And I was a -5,000. Okay, so
in his eyes, I didn't think I was a 4,000.
No, yeah, in my eyes, I did not want to lose this woman, and she's the one woman I love the most, and she's the woman I destroyed the most. Okay, so I have to rise up. That was the whole journey. Start reading, start taking courses, start hiring coaches, start with education and certifications, whatever. Okay.
When he says the one woman he loved the most, he means the one woman he's only ever seen in person.
That's right.
I am the one and only. There's no one out there.
You are the one and only. Okay. So I felt terrible about who I was, and I wanted to rise up, but I wanted to meet my wife, who I thought was this woman on this pedestal. Like, she's everything, you know? And if you recognize who you are in this state, guys, you're essentially, if you believe this, you are trying to change yourself for your partner. Okay. And when you realize, when you hear things like this isn't real, it's too good to be true, how long until you go back to the old way? Why didn't you do this 10 years ago? All of those kinds of things are because your partner's recognizing you're changing. We talked about that recently on a show. And then when you realize that you are changing to meet them at a 10, to meet them on their pedestal, to climb up to the top of the mountain with them, okay, you realize, wait a minute, I'm actually growing here. You'll start to see that your partner, if they're not doing anything, if they're not meeting you the same way, they're starting to feel a little bit more like a 6 or 7 or a 3. Because let me give you an easy example. Okay. If I stop yelling, okay, and Kathryn's slamming doors and smashing iPads while she's calling me a cunt, okay, which never happened, but but
that's really funny.
But let's just say
he was one, by the way.
But here's the thing. What happens then? She said this specifically. I felt like my actions made me feel like a 6 or a 7, and I had this man in front of me, and so she got involved in her own personal journey. But you guys, this is where people screw this up. You start.
Well, there's more to it. I feel like you're going too fast. So the pedestal. Let's lay it out for you guys. So when you are madly in love with your partner, oftentimes you will put your partner on a pedestal. Mostly that's an unhealthy thing to do. I loved him. I was head over heels, but I never put him on a pedestal. I didn't have unreasonable expectations. I didn't come from the same level of trauma that he came from. So he met me. He thought I was perfect, put me on that pedestal where he saw me as a 10 or a 4,000, like he says, which I love. He still sees me as a 4,000.
Baby, you're like 25,000.
Oh, you're 25,000 too.
But see, we're still working to 1 mil.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The whole pedestal thing, right? Anyway, so he put me up on this pedestal, and his behaviors, it was an insecurity thing. It's usually when someone puts you up on a pedestal and they think that you're the best thing in the world, they want to be on that pedestal too. And it drives this comparison.
Just keeping score.
There's a competition.
Competition.
Give to get. I love you this much. Why don't you love me this much? And then the piece that he kind of missed in there is when he started to treat me differently because I wasn't putting him on the same pedestal. Again, putting someone on a pedestal is not healthy. You can be head over heels in love with someone. Do not put them on a pedestal, because it's not fair to put someone up on that level, because nobody's perfect.
And everybody's going to slip. And everybody's going to make mistakes.
That's right. So in his insecurity and the competition, the giving to get, the why don't you love me this much, he started to act in ways that were not really very nice. And in reaction to him, I acted in ways that weren't really very nice, which then proved that I wasn't a 10. And this is where I think his 3 and 0 comes from, because then when you fall off that pedestal, or when that pedestal gets knocked down, you become the lowest, because your partner is you don't actually, but your partner is so disappointed that he thought you were a 10 or a 4,000. Now all of a sudden you're a 3. You're not actually. You're probably where we all are, which is somewhere in the middle. Average or above average, right? Like if you're below average, you should be working to be at least average. If you're average, you should be working to be above average.
It's just steps. It's like
just always try to be better. I always say strive for perfection, because if you don't strive to be perfect, you're never going to be your best. But you can never be perfect. You can never be a 10. So that what he said was, where I said you skipped a bunch, is that when you start responding to your partner who just kicked the pedestal up from underneath you or whatever,
guys, that's blame, that's guilt, that's shaming, it's all the scorekeeping that you're throwing in their face, right? Or shutting down completely and just running from them.
Right. And then there's this period of time that we'll fast forward a little bit, because then he started doing all of this work and I was bitter. So I was now the one that was acting like a 6 or a 7, because I was bitter. I held so much resentment. I blamed him for a lot. And here I was holding him back from being the man that he was trying to be. And I was like, wow, my husband has now come up. I wasn't holding him on a pedestal. I wasn't going to put him up there. Again, not healthy to do that. I loved him. I was respecting his growth. And I was like, wow, he's done all this work, and look at me holding him back. Now I'm the one that is acting like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
That's the point you were trying to make.
Yes. And so what I want you guys to think about is go back to what Kathryn was saying. It's just not healthy to be on putting your partner on a pedestal. We would say that, actually, I got this line from you. You would say, I'm as close to perfect as perfect gets. Our marriage is close to perfect. And that's because we don't even put our marriage on a pedestal anymore.
No.
We're just proud of what we're building. And we're creating new systems, new tools, new boundaries to keep us sure that we're moving forward and that we're lifting each other, because it's not really about a pedestal anymore. It's just all about giving. It's all about love. And that's why I say, don't try to save it. When you're trying to fix it or solve the problems, talk about the issues. I was on a call this morning with a man who joined the program who, he was like, but she's bringing up stuff from 15 years ago. And I was like, yeah, but that's because you're still trying to talk about it, or you're letting her try to talk about it. Either one of you doing this, you're not fixing it. You're staying in the past. The past is negative. Create the new, move forward. What's the exact opposite? And don't think that that's always the solution, but it starts with not doing the same things all the time. So no matter how much we love each other, we have to try to maintain that, baby, I know you're not perfect. I know you're going to make mistakes. We have to be able to go in with empathy and understanding and compassion for that.
Can I step in?
Yeah.
Which is harder for him than it is for me, because if you have strong narcissistic traits, or so they're called the cluster B personality disorders, borderline personality disorder, histrionic, antagonistic, and narcissistic personality disorder. If you were in that cluster B, which a lot of us are,
if you're just upset and fighting, you just sort of
you are going to gravitate towards cluster A, cluster B, or cluster C. I also gravitate towards cluster B. My traits are just not as strong. So if you are struggling with strong cluster B traits, it's going to be really difficult for you to see that it's not just right or wrong. It's not just perfect or imperfect. So it's harder for him to see me as this imperfect person. He has to remind himself that when I make a mistake, I'm just human. Whereas for me, I take your mistakes with a grain of salt. I always have.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is where if you are not struggling with the traits of strong, you can role model what it's like to be like, baby, I love you. Like when somebody makes a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Like I don't point out his mistakes until he points out mine. And then sometimes I have to say,
what am I doing?
No. I have to say, remember when you did this and I responded this way? And he'll be like, oh yeah. So sometimes he needs to see.
Yes, that's true.
Because he sees more black and white. He sees more like you made this big mistake. And I need to point out to him that he actually makes mistakes very frequently. We all do as humans, but I just don't call him out on them. So I make a mistake. He calls me out. He makes a mistake. I have to sometimes show him the grace and mercy that we need to have as humans, because he needs, just like he had to learn empathy, he needs to learn that there's a gray area. It's not just black and white.
Well, this brings up two valuable things. Like, so one thing you also do is great. When I have so I check my own reality a lot more now, right? I don't need all the help from Kathryn.
Mm-hmm.
Like my men would use the lords in the program because wives aren't necessarily on board, for example. So the realities,
they don't have the skills probably.
Yeah. And so the realities are skewed, right? And so when we have this sort of realization, as you start to do this growth, okay, we'll just use this pedestal. We'll stay on the same theme. When I realize that she can make mistakes, I can say to her something like, babe, I realized when I said XYZ that, I was kind of putting you on a pedestal again. Sorry, and then she'll say, yeah, baby. And she'll be cute. She'll be fun. She's not throwing it in my face. So there's a support.
Okay, I know I'm wearing a crown right now, but can you stop treating me like a queen?
Yeah,
you have to be cute. He would call it stat responding.
Yeah, that's right. You've got to be able to check your partner's reality with a lot more fun, because otherwise, if you think about it, all these things from keeping score and giving to get, the pedestals, the playing on the different levels of where you view your partner, that's all just keeping you in the same place. Check the reality in a new way. That's what I call it, stat response. Respond, don't react. We all get defensive. As all of you calling your partner a narcissist or being narcissistic when you do.
If you're calling your partner a narcissist, you're probably the narcissist. I didn't tell him he was a narcissist until he started to heal and it was safe. You don't call someone a narcissist who actually is a narcissist because it's not safe. So if your partner's calling you a narcissist, ding, ding, ding.
That's just a side lesson. What I'm trying to say is this: when you are doing that, you are presenting the qualities, at least in that moment, right? So when you understand this, you can start to check your own reality more. When you're a team, you check your reality together. She has to check mine a lot more than I have to check hers. But at the end of the day, you need proper support. Then you can view your partner where they're truly at. It's just love them.
Yeah, when you're connected, it's so much easier. I'll end with this.
Yeah.
So he will sometimes say to me, because he struggles more with the different realities, the black, the white, all of these things. He'll say to me jokingly and also with all seriousness, are you messing with me right now? Because my realities are off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, honey, I'm not messing with you. And so he knows we have a level of trust where not only can he make a joke about it, he can also, there's probably a level of seriousness that he wants to know if he's cuckoo or not in that moment. And he's not cuckoo, but in the moment when your reality is skewed, we all are when we think something that's not actually happening. And it can be cognitive distortions. It can be alternative realities. It can be straight up narcissism, and there's all kinds of things. But when you are connected, you can make light of it, make a joke, stat respond, like he says. And then you can get more connected, because then he trusts me when I'm like, no, I'm not messing with you. I promise. Like, this is the reality.
That brings up an example that was pretty new recently, actually. Kathryn takes really good care of me. And I said something to her like, baby, I can just feel how much you love me. You're just taking such good care of me. She goes, yeah, that's how I always am. and it's fun.
You know what? Oh, that's a really good example, because I'm just going to clarify what he said. So he said, lately, I feel the love. I feel how much you love me. I've really noticed how much you're taking care of me. Nothing has changed though.
Yeah, that's what.
And so he gets in highs and lows, where when he's in a high, he notices all the things I do. When he's in a low, he notices all the things I don't.
Classic nice guy.
Yep, nice asshole. Yeah. And so when he thanks me, I try to tell him I actually am like this all the time. Now, of course, I'm not. It's not 100% of the time. There'll be some times where I'll have to come over and give him a hug, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm failing on physical touch or something like that. But mostly the things that he points out when he's in a high, he's just pointing out the way that I live my life.
But notice, guys, it's safe to do so because the connection is there, right? Otherwise, you might come across as very defensive.
Either one of you could.
Yeah, that's right.
I could be like, I do that all the time. Why are you thanking me?
Exactly.
I'm just like, I'm like this all the time, baby. Love you. Love you, my sweet husband. See, like, there's ways to connect that you don't need to see things eye to eye. You have to show what each of you sees and then come together to see what is actually happening.
And if you don't know how to get there, the how is addressed in what we do. So keep listening or join the programs. MorrowMarriage.com. All right. See you guys.